Back on the Young Turks. Now we're going to talk to Stephanie Teller from Progressive Change Campaign Committee. And they did some fascinating polls to find out what was going on in the minds of the voters, whether they were brown voters, well, actually specifically Obama voters that switched to brown, which is an interesting phenomenon. Stephanie, welcome to the Young Turks.
Thanks, Jake. How are you?
I'm great. Great to have you here.
Good.
First, let me run a different poll by you. Rasmussen did a poll and found out that 22% of Democrats in Massachusetts voted for Brown rather than Coakley. Now, first of all, that seems like a large number, doesn't it, Stephanie?
I'm actually not surprised by that, Jink. We found in our own poll that about 18% of Obama supporters that we polled voted for Brown. But I think that gets to actually one of the reasons that we ran this poll in the first place. Our concern is that Democrats are on the verge of learning exactly the wrong lesson from Massachusetts. And that is what we saw even before the ballots were counted. We saw Evan Bayh and Joe Lieberman saying that Democrats need to be more centrist and more moderate. We obviously think that that's wrong. And so that was one of the reasons that we decided to run this poll with our friends at Democracy for America and Move On. I do want to say that folks listening can check out the results at boldprogressives.org. But what we found is that voters in Massachusetts, even if they voted for Scott Brown, they overwhelmingly want Democrats and want Congress to be more progressive, not less progressive. And this is just an incredibly important message to spread, especially right now when so much of healthcare hangs in the balance.
Well, Stephanie, you know, conventional wisdom right now in Washington is, well, they switched over to Brown because Evan Bayh, Joe Lieberman say they want Democrats to go more right. And then part of the reason they say that is Rasmussen's poll also says that 78% of Brown voters strongly oppose the health care legislation before Congress. But what I found interesting from your poll is why they oppose it, right? So talk to me about Obama voters who switched over, because that's critical. Because if they all stay with the Democratic Party wins easily. They have switched over to Brown. Now,
that's right.
What were their views on health care?
Okay. So for folks who are listening, we polled people who voted for Obama in 2008, including Democrats, Independents, and Republicans. And to us, one of the most shocking results was that of those people, those who voted for Scott Brown actually support the public option by 82% overall. A huge number. And then an overwhelming majority of those who did not support the health care bill said that they didn't support it because it did not go far enough, which to us really shows that this election was a repudiation of centrism, not progressivism. Voters were saying, I'm mad that Democrats aren't acting more like populists. They should be taking on the big insurance industries. They should be taking on the big banks, and they aren't. And really what we're seeing is that Scott Brown is this accidental beneficiary of that outrage.
So, again, I want the audience to understand it right. It's Obama voters that switched over and voted for the Republican. Of those,
that's right.
80%, 82% say that they support the public option, and 57% say that the reason they're against health care bill is because it didn't go far enough. Now,
that's right.
That's an amazing stat and very, very important to the conversation of whether the Democratic Party should go left or right after this election. Unfortunately, it also makes me, it discourages me a little bit, Stephanie, because, boy, do they not know what they're doing. Because, I mean, I get the dissatisfaction, but if you vote for Brown, that bill ain't going further left.
So I think that the one positive thing that we could see would be, if anything, would be hopefully a wake-up call to Democrats, and that's why it's incredibly important that you're giving attention to this on your show. I think that it's really important for other people to talk about these poll results and really repeat over and over the mantra that Massachusetts was really about voters wanting Democrats to do more, to go farther, to be bolder. Just to cover some of the other questions that we asked, because we did also ask people's opinions of the economy and lobbyists. Among the people we polled, nearly 50% said that Democrats in Washington are more on the side of lobbyists and special interests than on the side of people like me. Over 50% said they saw no change in Washington when Democrats took power. These should be very, very scary numbers to any Democrat in elected office in America.
I think that's the heart of it, honestly. And we're talking to Stephanie Teller from Progressive Change Campaign Committee, and you could find out more about this at boldprogressives.org. You know, Stephanie, the main thing is they voted for change, and it appears to them that they didn't get it, right? So,
that's right.
And as Obama even concedes, well, that's why they voted for the change again. When this election came about, they're like, well, that didn't work, let me vote for change again. Now, do we have any hope that to what is an obvious message to us, and given your polling is even more obvious, is actually going to penetrate the very thick bubble of Washington and the very thick bubble of the White House and get through their head, hey, maybe, just maybe, you should do what you promised during the election?
Well, I think that this week is very critical for progressives to spread that message. Personally, for us, for the Progressive Change Campaign Committee, our focus for the moment is health care, and it's also about making the health care fight a proxy fight over whether Democrats will become more or less progressive in the coming weeks and months. And so we have a petition right now with over 100,000 signatures asking Congress to pass a stronger health care bill with a public option through the Senate through budget reconciliation. That's one way that we're trying to apply that kind of pressure to push Democrats to be more responsive to their constituents, to be further left, to be bolder. Folks can join again at boldprogressives.org. I mean, we did see yesterday two progressive congressmen. We saw Anthony Weiner and Gerald Nadler, who said that the only way they could sign on to the Senate bill is if, you know, there were a lot of changes that were made and if a lot of fixes happened. And so we're also going to be urging these House Democrats to just be extremely tough in these negotiations and push very, very hard to make the Senate pass a better bill with a public option through reconciliation.
Well, you see, there's our silver lining, Stephanie, because if the Democrats go in the right direction and say, hey, you know what, the problem is we didn't deliver for people, and we didn't give them the change that we promised them, and it seems like we're on the side of the bankers, we're on the side of corporate America, we need to change that in a hurry. Well, then, actually, this defeat could be a blessing in disguise. It could be that where they go, hey, you know what, I know how we can get health care reform, and a strong version of health care reform, and one that doesn't continually negotiate and water down the bill for the corporate America. We do it through reconciliation. Now, so this current version seems to be dead. Now, you got Weiner and some others who are saying, yeah, okay, I mean, that's the way to go. But again, you know, do we have a sense of whether there's momentum behind that, any sense of whether the White House is going to go in that direction, or if they're going to say, hey, you know what, we need to make it even weaker. You know, Obama said to Stephanopoulos, we need to have just pass the parts that everybody agrees on. That's a terrible sign, isn't it?
Well, to be honest, Cenk, I think we really have to look at Congress right now for leadership. So I think the White House has been very disappointing in this entire process. Even today, the White House, as you pointed out, was releasing these extremely tepid statements. They even said that the president's preference is to pass a bill that's affordable and lowers costs. Citing a preference for a mediocre bill is hardly an exercise in bold leadership. And so I think that it's really incumbent on progressives right now to turn to Congress and talk to the Democrats and the senators who are in the fight for their political lives. And we have to make this very, very real for them and make them understand that what they do over the coming weeks and over the coming months in terms of whether they pass bolder and better legislation or retreat is really going to affect their political lives.
You know, Stephanie, one more question for you. Do you get reaction from congressmen or senators to your polls? Does a senator or congressman ever call up and go, you know what, I hadn't thought of it that way. That's really interesting that it turns out the Obama voters switched to voting for Republicans because we weren't going far enough in fighting for health care for American people, et cetera, et cetera. Or does this get quoted in a couple of places and then it gets swamped by Fox News, et cetera?
We actually have seen in the past that they pay attention to polls. Back several months ago when it was questionable whether Harry Reid would be including the public option in the plan that he originally took to the Senate, it was looking very questionable. We released these polls that showed how critical it was to Harry Reid in Nevada to have a public option and fight for a public option in his plan. And we saw evidence that he did pay attention to that, and then the public option was put into the plan that he presented to the Senate. I think that it really depends on the progressive movement, again, to amplify the results of these polls. At times it feels like leading a horse to water, right? How do we show the Democrats their best path to staying in power?
And look, people have to understand that we're not doing this because, hey, that's our opinion, right? We're basing our arguments on facts and on numbers. Look, here are the Obama voters. Here's why they switched over. Now, when you go to the Lieberman side, there's also numbers there. Lieberman says, I'm right. The people are on my side. We should go further right. But when you look at the poll numbers in Connecticut, his approval rating is 25%. His disapproval rating is 67%. So, obviously, people don't agree with Lieberman.
That's right.
So the only question is whether they're going to listen.
Even in the last day, he was trying to say, when he was making these arguments about how the Democrats should move further to the center, he said, well, opposition to health care reform is very large among independents. Well, our polling shows that that's just not true. And so really, I think that the Democrats have to start questioning if Joe Lieberman is the best, if they should be taking their strategic direction from Joe Lieberman.
Leave it to the Democrats if that would even be a question. All right, Stephanie Keller's from Progressive Change Campaign Committee, and you can find out more about this poll at boldprogressives.org and join the petition to say, hey, you know what, let's get stronger and let's do healthcare through reconciliation. Stephanie, thanks so much for joining us.
Watch more clips at theyoungturks.com.